All right, we're using Google Sheets, and on the left we have what's now an old-fashioned table of data. And on the right we have what's called a Google Sheets table. So it's the same word, but the one on the right is made into an actual table through Google Sheets. So if you were to highlight this, and you would, I think, just right click on it, convert to table. I haven't done that on the left, but I've done that on the right hand side of the screen. And we're going to go over 5 concepts that you no longer really need to do on the right, where there's an actual Google Sheets table, because it's been built in. All right, so on the left, we're going to do the first thing that you don't have to do anymore, and that is formatting and data validation. So let's take the formatting back off of these numbers. So we'll go to Format, Clear Formatting, and we'll take the currency label off. So this is how you would start the table, right? You would put in $1.99, $7.99. Well, if you know that's currency and you want to get a warning if someone puts in something that's not currency, what you would have to do before is highlight it. Then you change the formatting to currency. Not too hard so far, right? But then you have to do data validation. So data, then come down to data validation. And there's really no way to ensure that it's currency. You can, though, just check to see if it's a number. So you could make it a custom formula and make the formula is number. We'll start it in D3. And if it's not, you could show a warning. So we'll say done on that. And we'll change $7.99 to $7.99. And you get a warning. All right, that was several steps. Wasn't terrible, but we don't need to do that anymore. What you do in a table is you would come to the column. So there's a new concept where the headers get these controls. These are column controls, so it impacts everything down here. You would click on it. You would edit the column type and change it to currency. And when you do that, you get the formatting, but you also get the validation. So we'll just say 7 here, and you get a warning. Okay, so that was a lot less clicks, and you get the cute little icon here letting you know that it's currency. So that is concept number 1 that you no longer have to deal with. Let me undo some of these. All right, we're back. Shrink this. The second concept that is coming in with these tables is that they have names. So the columns have names and the table itself has a name. So what does that mean, right? What's the impact of that? This entire table is named sales history. And what that allows us to do is access it with formulas. So if you start typing sales, you see that you can reference the table and you can reference the columns within the table. So if you wanted the items in the sales history, you just click on that. Now, normally you're going to use that inside a formula. I can hit enter on it now, and it gets mad because that's an array of data, right? You're trying to put it into a single cell, but it's pointing to there. Let's do something with it. Let's pick one that we can sum. So we're going to change it to units. It's picking those units, and we're going to sum all of those numbers. There we go, 242. To do that in the old way, if you wanted to use a nickname, you wanted to use formulas that maybe are a little bit better to read. Here you can see you're summing the units in the sales history. You would have to use something called named range. Named range is the concept, but you would put in a named range. So what you would do is you would highlight that data. You would right click on it. Yeah, it was hard to find. Go to view more cell actions and define a named range. And there you can, let's just call it unit, or can't type today, unit cost. And you see it's the range that you highlighted, and click done. And you've accomplished a similar thing, but none of the other columns are named, right? And the entire table isn't named. So you would have to build all of those yourself. Once you do, it works fine. So let's type in, when you type in UNIT, you see that named range, unit cost, but then you see the pre-built units and unit cost already, just because we converted the data on the right into a table. All right, concept number 3 that you don't need anymore is the array formula. So I'll show you what I mean by that. If you were to, let's take off this total column. We'll reset that on both of these. And what that total column is the units times the unit cost, and then you repeat it for each row. So an easy way to do that is type out array formula and then give it these ranges. So we'll say we want C3 through C8 multiplied by D3 through D8. Okay, that's kind of cool how that works, right? And that will go all the way to the bottom of the range that you specify. So both of these ranges need to be the same height. And you can already see if you add a row to this table, it's not going to pick it up. 33 and 455. This isn't smart enough to copy this down. Now you could have used a different format of ranges. We'll talk about that next. But that's a concept you don't have to worry about with a table. So let's come here and just let's say units times cost. And if you copy it down, let's go to add another row to the table. There are a lot of different ways to do what I just did, but it's still, this will illustrate the concept. Let's say we added 33 units again at 455. That formula adjusts because of the whole concept of these Google Sheets tables is that they're expandable. And what it did is it took the boundary of the table and moved it down one row because it assumed what you're adding to the bottom still belonged to the table. So that's a big concept that you get with these Google Sheets tables, is that they will increase the boundary, the defining line of where the table data is, and it makes assumptions like it kept the formatting, it kept the data validation, so it enforced that that was currency, it copied down the formula, and if you were referencing this table, and let's say you were referencing the totals, it would pick up that new line. The next concept that you don't need to worry about is if you were trying to be a little bit smarter here and you were, let's say we're averaging the unit cost. And we wanted to pick them all this way. You see you get $4.78. Well, if you want to use one of the superpowers of Google Sheets that doesn't work this way in Excel, I'll have you know, is that you drop the number of the last row, and that will extend all the way down to the bottom of the spreadsheet. So that's 478 now, but if you add something that's $1, that's going to drop down the average, right? So that is a handy way to work around these expanding ranges. But there is at least one problem with it, is if you have other data down here that doesn't belong in the table and you don't want it to belong in the table, it's still going to get picked up in these formulas. So a way around that is to use the new table reference formulas. So you can average, and now there is a new kind of reference available. If you start typing the name of the table, which is sales history, you see here, you can reference the entire table, or you can pick up specific columns. So since we average total, we'll get total again. And you see the syntax here, the name of the table, and then in square brackets, the name of the column. We will end that formula and hit enter, and we get 172.53. But the big point I want to make here is if you were to add a 1 on the bottom here, it would expand properly. So that lowered the average. But if you, well, I'm doing the total column, but it lowered it because that's a 0. If you added 1 way down here that's not in the table, it doesn't change the average formula because you're not using one of those unending cell references. So the last concept that is replaced and actually just greatly improved with tables is the ability to group, view by grouping. So let's clean up this table. We're going to delete that. Actually don't know how to delete rows 9 through 10. Okay, so I cleaned up the tables a little bit. Let's get rid of this data. And let's say you want to group a table by the items. So you want to put all the binders together, all the pencils, all the pens. It's really hard to have a way to do that with a non-structured table. There is a grouping feature. So let's say these 2 pencils, you have to select the whole row, go down 1, right click, and you can group it. And it's expandable and shrinkable. So let's click on this, and you've grouped those 2 pencils, but this one up here isn't grouped, right? Because this grouping function is pretty manual. Let's select this and just undo it. And we'll come over to the table, and they've made it really easy. So let's do the drop down by the title of the name of the table, and this gives you table wide controls, and it's not in there. I'm joking. Let's go over to the views. We'll click on that, and we want to create a group by a view, and we said items. Click on the items, and it magically puts the binders together, the pens together, and the pencils together without deleting anything and without rearranging rows. You can see that it added these filler rows that don't have numbers so that they could do these labels, but it gave you a grouping by item, and you can undo it with just a click. Let's say we don't want to save that temporary view, and you're back to where you started. So in this next video, we'll talk more about how to use those table references, because they do open up an entirely different way of working with your data in Google Sheets. I'll see you in that video. Thanks for watching.